I've been saying this like before the movie came out. I've been saying that an easier way for them to, you know, to figure out the T'Challa stuff without completely killing him off, if they had to have a movie come out now, there I personally felt like they should have had this movie be take place during the 5-year snap. You know, when Thanos snapped away half of existence, this movie honestly it should have took place during that 5 years, you know? And I know there's gonna be people out there that say like it possibly couldn't work because, they established that Shuri got snapped during the 5 years. And like, okay, so with that, I'm like, they first of all, they never fully clarified if she got snapped. Um, like they never fully clarified that. It was implied slightly, but not fully. And even if that's the case that Shuri got snapped, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I would have retconned that, because her getting snapped doesn't fully impact the Avengers movies. Whether she got snapped or not, it doesn't fully impact what happens with Infinity War and Endgame. So I would have just retconned it where she never got snapped. You know, I really don't think it would have been that big of a deal. And if you want to talk about retconning in Marvel, they've already retconned so many things in the MCU already. So it's like, what's one more retcon? And it's like I feel like people would understand enough that they had to make those type of choices for the betterment of the franchise. Like I think people would have been fine with that if she was still alive. But like I honestly think they should have had this movie take place during the 5 year snap. And like they could have found a way for them, to keep T'Challa alive without having to use him. And like after watching this movie, I feel that even more now because they have this plot point where the government is trying to go after Wakanda's resources because they believe that Wakanda's vulnerable because T'Challa died. They don't have a king, they don't have a Black Panther, so they're instantly after their resources now. So I'm seeing this and I'm like, so if this happened because T'Challa died, so you're telling me during the 5 years they didn't try that again? They didn't try that before? Like you had 5 years without a king, without a Black Panther, and nothing happened. It was just really strange to me that they never addressed what happened during those 5 years. They never addressed what happened to Wakanda. Like how did they adapt? How did the council in Wakanda? How did they react to T'Challa being dusted off and there's no king? Like what are the politics with that? How did they adapt in those 5 years without their king? And that they're at their most vulnerable. Why did they never address that? Like it's just more apparent now because like as I said, the government is after resources after they know that T'Challa died from a sickness and there's no Black Panther. So if they're doing it here, they definitely tried that in the 5 years. And then you're also telling me that Talocan and Namor didn't do anything in those 5 years either? Like Namor didn't freak out that half of his people was gone too? They never went to Wakanda and tried to figure out what was going on? Or them trying to take over Wakanda as well because they're vulnerable, they don't have a king? Like none of that stuff was addressed in the 5 years. It's just really it just baffles me they never addressed what happened in those 5 years. And so that's a perfect time for them to just make a story there. How did Wakanda react with half the universe being dusted? Make a story around that, and you could still have Talocan and stuff like that, and you could still include Ironheart in there if they wanted to, but like that's the way they could have done it. And now, okay, so that's another thing for people that probably want to argue me. But then, how could they have Ironheart in the 5 year snap? They like Ironheart is there because Iron Man died, right? I mean, not necessarily. You don't need to have Iron Man dead for them to have another Iron person in the universe because there's already established that there's other people with suits when he was alive, and you're about to have an Armor Wars movie as well. So it's like you could have just had a student be influenced by Iron Man, and she decided to create her own suit. And then also keep in mind that during the 5 years, Tony Stark retired. Like he wasn't Iron Man in those 5 years. Nope. Like so, he was busy raising her daughter. Being with Pepper. So it's like there was no Iron Man in those 5 years either. So it's like I don't think it was out of the realm of a possibility that you know a student just so happened to be really smart as well, that she made her own suit as well. It's happened before. Other people made Iron Man suits in the universe as well. So like that's fine. But it just baffles my mind that Ryan Coogler and Kevin Feige never thought about that. You know, like I think that would have been fine for a sequel, and like we all would have been happy. I mean, I wouldn't say happy, but we all would have been somewhat satisfied. With the future of the Black Panther franchise if they just made the movie during the 5 year snap. Because now we're just like forcing all this stuff to happen in this movie.